Hi class, it's my privilege to welcome you to Unit 4 of 1 Corinthians. This is where the emotional tempo of the class really begins to pick up, and I think the course gets so much more exciting because we're going to start diving into the meat of the text of 1 Corinthians and recognizing not only the revelation, but the historical complexity that this text brings to us. And in that historical complexity, I believe that we find the complex reality of our own day, particularly the complex reality of life in a local church. I don't know about your church. Mine's messy. There are no clean lines and categories. It's just a bunch of sinners who've been redeemed by Jesus Christ trying to get along and be this redeemed, life-giving community. That's messy business, and 1 Corinthians is a remarkable testimony to that. You know, it struck me in my years of analyzing this letter that Paul never wavers in calling these Corinthian saints. Paul never wavers in calling these Corinthians Christians, even though they seem to be getting so much wrong. And that is a hopeful word for each and every one of us who've committed our lives to the work of God and the work of the local church in the world today. So I'm looking forward to continuing to plod through our journey. And for the first time, we're really going to take a broad swath of 1 Corinthians and wrap our minds and hearts around it this unit, which is Unit 4. I have graded your Unit 3 reflection papers. My individualized comments are there for you to see in the online system. If you have any questions or even disappointments about your grade, I trust that my comments will guide you to do better in future weeks, but you should also feel free to email or to call me if you'd like to set up a conversation about any of that. For the most part, I'm overwhelmingly impressed with your work, your level of engagement with the textbooks, with one another on the discussion posts. And let that be a reminder that Unit 3 discussion post is actually going to be open another day. We had some technical difficulties this week, so take another day to post on Jorge's paper. It's very, very good. And we're just seeing some really model work from you as you reflect with the text and upon the secondary literature as well. So during the third unit, we were introduced to the thesis statement of 1 Corinthians, to the primary problem that this letter is going to address. And that thesis statement was, of course, schisms. It's in 1 verse 10 through 12 that we find out that those from Chloe, members of Chloe's household, perhaps even Chloe's slaves, have come to Paul with disturbing news. There are schismata, there are factions in the church, and these factions appear to be built around claims to various early Christian leaders. In verse 12, somebody says, I follow Paul, another Apollos, another Cephas, another, the spiritual group says, I follow Christ. These allegiances to various church leaders appear to be connected, at least in the eyes of some of the Christians, to the practice of baptism, as we see in the ensuing verses. But what we're going to see this week is after setting up this problem of factions and schisms, Paul goes off in another direction. In fact, for a few chapters, he's going to talk about elite qualities of Greco-Roman life in ancient Corinth. He's going to talk about rhetoric, the wisdom of speech, which, as we've seen in our study of Corinth, was basically a sport in first century Corinth. He's going to talk about wisdom and knowledge, these qualities that certain elite people are claiming for themselves and are claiming are a part of their new Christian life. And then in chapter 1, verse 26, we get this curious phrase, not many. Brothers, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were influential. Not many were of noble birth. Is this not primary evidence that there are a few higher status Corinthians that are throwing the community into this turmoil of schisms? I'll let you be the judge of the evidence, but throughout the course, I think we're going to see that the evidence points toward that kind of dominant minority. And so after breaking apart their value system with Paul's theology of foolishness, with Paul's subversive theology of the cross, suddenly the issue of the schisms dramatically changes. Look at chapter 3, verse 4, because suddenly all of the other names, other than Apollos, have dropped off the map. For when one says, I follow Paul, and another, I follow Apollos, are you not mere men? What, after all, is Apollos, and what is Paul? Only slaves, through whom you came to believe, as the Lord has assigned to each of his tasks. And I would suggest, along with the Finney article, that what Paul goes on to do in chapters 3 and 4 is to make sure the Corinthians understand that even though both he and Apollos are servants of God, Paul is the preeminent servant for the Corinthians because he is the founder of that community. As he said, I planted, Apollos watered, but God makes it grow. But I think Paul would say emphatically, I planted, not Apollos. I was here first, therefore I deserve to have the preeminent place of leadership in this community. Those are some of the dynamics that we're seeing in 1 Corinthians 1 through 4. And it's going to be a very fun week engaging those dynamics with you. As always, reflection papers are due Saturday night by midnight. Please post those to the Dropbox. I'll put one up for class discussion. The Finney article is posted to the resources page. It worked on my end in downloading it, so I think you'll have no problem accessing that. And there is a fee reading to these chapters as well. Looking forward to more of your great work. God bless. Have a great week.